Picture this. It's the winter of 2018, and the whole world is watching PyeongChang, South Korea for the Winter Olympics. It's supposed to be this huge global party celebrating peace and human achievement. But behind all the spectacle, a totally different game was being played, an invisible war that was about to bring the entire thing crashing down. For a guy named Sang Woo, the head of IT for the games, this was his moment. He's sitting there in the stands watching this incredible opening ceremony, and he's just filled with this immense pride. I mean, he and his team spent years building the digital backbone for all of this. It was his masterpiece. But here's the crazy part. As the world is watching fireworks and listening to kids sing, something absolutely catastrophic is happening behind the scenes. An invisible, vicious piece of malware is just ripping through the network he built, erasing everything with brutal, terrifying speed. The celebration and the sabotage were happening literally at the exact same time. Right as the ceremony gets underway, Sang Woo's phone just blows up. Text after text, and they're all saying the same horrible thing. The core servers, the domain controllers, are being wiped out. They were just vanishing, one by one, in this perfectly synchronized, devastating attack. The digital heart of the Olympics was being methodically ripped out. So what are domain controllers? Well, think of them as the master keys to the entire digital kingdom. They handle everything: who gets to log in, what computers can connect, all the security. If you lose your domain controllers, it's not like you just lost a few files. You lose control over everything. The whole system is yours no more. And the impact was instant. Bam! Over 10,000 computers, the ones used by staff, volunteers, journalists for literally every single task, were just knocked offline. It created this tidal wave of chaos across every single Olympic venue. At the same time, the attack went for the core. 300 servers, spread across 2 huge data centers, were just erased. All the data wiped clean like it was never even there. It took the entire digital brain of the games and just flicked the off switch. And if that wasn't enough, 6,300 Wi-Fi routers just went dead. This plunged the venues into total digital darkness, cutting off internet for thousands of athletes, officials, and the press, basically severing their connection to the outside world. And this wasn't just some tech problem, this was real-world chaos. Journalists couldn't send their stories because the Wi-Fi was gone. Fans couldn't even get into the stadiums because the ticket gates were frozen solid. The official app people were using to get around crashed. The big screens inside the venues, all blank. Even the digital doors wouldn't open. The entire event was grinding to a halt. So while Sang Woo's team is in full panic mode trying to put out these fires, a global team of cybersecurity experts starts the hunt. And they knew right away, this wasn't some random hacker. The sophistication, the timing, this had all the hallmarks of a state-sponsored attack. The question was, which state? And that's where things got really, really weird. The attacker left behind this dizzying maze of clues, all pointing in different directions. Some of the code looked exactly like tools used by North Korea's infamous Lazarus Group. But then, other parts were identical to code that had only ever been seen in attacks by Chinese state hackers. And the whole destroy everything vibe, it felt just like Russia's Not Petty attack. It was the ultimate digital whodunit. And that's when you realize what the attacker's real game was: pure deception. They were using a classic spy technique called a false flag. They weren't just covering their tracks, they were actively planting fake evidence, carefully building a case against other countries just to send investigators on a wild goose chase. I mean, the level of deception here was just incredible. It really was psychological warfare against the very people trying to solve the crime. The attackers even faked the malware's deepest metadata to perfectly mimic a known North Korean virus. They wanted to get caught, but only as someone else. So with everyone running around chasing these ghosts, one analyst from the security firm FireEye has a brilliant idea. He decides, you know what? I'm going to stop looking at the virus. He just ignored all the confusing, contradictory code and focused on one simple question. How did this thing get in here in the first place? His approach was so simple, it was genius. First, he looked at how it was delivered, phishing emails sent to Olympic staff months before. Then, he traced the tools used to make those infected emails. And finally, he looked for the command and control server the malware was trying to phone home to. He wasn't looking at the weapon, he was looking at the supply chain, knowing that hackers might disguise a weapon, but they often get lazy and reuse their old tools. And that's when he hit the jackpot.
He found a single piece of digital infrastructure, a command server that had been used before, and not just once. It was the same server infrastructure used in attacks on Ukraine in 2017 and, get this, the exact same one used to hack U.S. election systems back in 2016.
This was the digital smoking gun. The domain was accountslogins.net. While the attackers had been masters of disguise with their virus, they got sloppy. They reused an old piece of their infrastructure, one single digital breadcrumb that tied this attack directly to a long string of Russian cyber operations. And just like that, the trail of false flags was over. The real evidence didn't point to North Korea, it didn't point to China. It pointed squarely at one of the most dangerous and destructive state-sponsored hacking groups on the entire planet, a unit inside Russia's military intelligence. The group was Sandworm, also known as Unit 7455 of Russia's GRU. And these guys, they are not your average hackers. They're the ones who caused massive blackouts across Ukraine and unleashed the NotPetya virus, a piece of malware that caused billions of dollars in damage worldwide. And now, they'd set their sights on the Olympics. Okay, but that just begs the biggest question of all, right? Why? Why would an elite military intelligence unit risk global condemnation to go after a peaceful sporting event? The motive. It wasn't about spying. It wasn't about gaining a military edge. It was something way, way pettier. The motive was simple: childish revenge. See, the International Olympic Committee had officially banned Russia from competing under its own flag at the PyeongChang Games. It was a punishment for a gigantic, state-run doping scandal. Russia was humiliated on the world stage, and this attack was their way of lashing out. The official indictment from the U.S. Department of Justice probably said it best. They called the whole thing the temper tantrum of a petulant child with the resources of a nation-state. All that skill, all that sophisticated deception, and it was all just for a giant digital temper tantrum. But the story doesn't really end there, because maybe the most shocking part of this whole affair wasn't the attack itself, but what happened, or rather what didn't happen, afterward. Despite a mountain of evidence that researchers had painstakingly put together, not a single government officially called out Russia at the time. There was just silence. And that silence, it created a really dangerous new normal. It basically told attackers everywhere that you can attack a global event meant to foster peace and pretty much get away with it. It proved that the game now is to make attribution, figuring out who did it, the real battlefield. And we even learned they tried to hack the official timing systems to literally change the results of the games. Their goal wasn't just chaos, it was to attack the very idea of truth. So this leaves us with a really chilling question for the future. When the next big conflict kicks off, it might not start with a bang, but with a few lines of code. And in a world where digital evidence can be perfectly faked, where attackers can wear any mask they want, how will we ever really know who fired that first shot?